from Politico. Now, I wouldn't normally see Politico as putting articles out that are pro-Russian or anti-Ukraine or anything like that. To see this appear means that then, well, the way I interpret it is there is a growing push now to change the narrative. Is it to reflect the reality? Maybe. Is it to prepare for some big change coming? Possibly. I mean, any shift away from the outright, blatant, total support that there's been for the last 3 years is significant. Anything shifting away from that is significant. Now, you could point to any number of niche media outlets that were very ideologically aligned who've been doing that sort of stuff for years. Okay, no difference from them. But then again, it's the shift in stance on an organisation like Politico's level that makes it stand out. I mean, the shift in any political organisation, any organisation's level, makes it stand out. So this came through, where's the date on it? No date. Oh, there it is, October 31st. So a few days ago, before this coverage of Pokrovsk started coming in, before they had those special forces committed, before the media started catching up to the other stuff. Now, it's possible these guys had picked it up through various chat groups, but the suggestion here is that, yeah, it's well, more about internal stuff than it is external. So some of the internal complaints, or some of the complaints about the internal management by Zelensky or by the Ukrainian president, is suspension of elections, the banning of opposition political parties, corruption, basically. So, for example, keeping power on, well, a great thing when infrastructure is being hit, but then being forced to resign in 2024 raises questions. Why are you being forced to step aside when you've been able to keep the lights on for 3 years of conflict? And so he says that it was because it was authority had been centralized. Now, everyone says that they're not engaged in fascist or authoritarian behaviours, yet every time you turn around, there's more centralization, there's more gathering of power like this. He said he feared corrupt individuals would end up taking over the state-owned company. Now, again, there's memes out there, and they're valid memes, showing the change in media reporting before 2014 and after 2014 and after 2022 about the state of politics and corruption and people trafficking and lots of bad things that was happening in Ukraine, and that it was one step away from being a failed state. Yet, magically, after 2014 and again after 2022, it was almost impossible to, or almost no longer allowed to, issue that sort of criticism. Ukraine was now this beacon of purity and hope, when the only thing that changed was some people shooting each other in the eastern oblasts. So this guy, who was former head of it, said, look, he'd feared corrupt individuals would end up taking over the state-owned company, and because he didn't shut up about it, they suggest that's why he ended up in court. Now, people criticise Putin for doing this sort of stuff, allege him to do this sort of stuff. Ukraine, not much different. Where he's around embezzlement charges. Now, the whole idea that Trump got impeached because he questioned whether Biden had influenced the decision to fire / prosecutors / cease corruption investigations into a power company, into Burisma. Yeah, okay. I mean, that was very much politically driven, but hey, whatevs. Yeah, so opposition lawmakers, if there's any that exist, saying that it's another example of Ukraine's leadership using lawfare to intimidate opponents and silence critics. Now, if you believe the idea that the certain elements of the US government or the US that have had excessive amounts of influence in Ukraine through Euromaidan before and after have generally been democratic aligned, then you could see this use of lawfare as being very much down the lines of that. But at the same time, it's a process that Putin has also used against some of his opponents, or people who have fallen out of his good graces. Accusing them of corruption or collaboration, well, that almost sounds like Hamas. Zelensky's obviously declined to comment. Others who have received the same treatment include the previous president, Poroshenko, who was sanctioned and ran on corruption. Well, see, that's interesting. Sanctions have frequently been threatened or used against opponents, freezing assets and blocking the person from conducting any financial transactions. Poroshenko has accused Zelensky of creeping authoritarianism. Creeping, probably flat out sprinting, and seeking to remove any competitor from the local political landscape. Well, suspending elections and banning opposition parties tends to do that. They believe that the use of lawfare to discredit opponents is only going to get worse as the presidential office prepares for a possible election next year in the event there's a ceasefire. Well, that's an interesting read. They're using the courts to clear the field of competitors to shape a dishonest election. I thought you can't shape elections. Anyway, the claim prosecution is political. Yep, doesn't make any legal sense. A contract authorised 7 years ago. Okay, well, I mean, it doesn't matter how long ago you did corrupt behaviour. The sub didn't begin work on the assigned infrastructure improvements, and they regained some payment. Well, which is fair enough. I mean, failed to deliver a contract. You've got penalty clauses. Nothing seems too bad there. There's no evidence that the guy that was under charge has enriched himself. No damage done. Can't help but this is all politically motivated. Okay, blah, 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 blah. One senior Ukrainian advisor who asked not to be identified so they could speak about the case dismissed the defence's description of the case as being politically motivated, claiming there's no substance to the embezzlement allegations, and claiming there's none of it. People should wait on this case until the full hearing. Former Deputy PM, the case doesn't look good for any angle domestically or when it comes to international partners. Nope. It's unhelpful for Ukraine as it coincides with Kiev's ongoing appeal for more energy assistance. Energy challenges and greater challenges attacks, yet that's not a problem. Scapegoating, yeah, no, well, he's already been sacked. So, yeah, people are fearing that others are getting prepared for being scapegoated for when the power and heat fails over the coming winter. There are parts of Ukraine that probably won't have any electricity until spring. It's already 10 degrees Celsius in Kiev apartments now. Well, okay, I don't know what that is in American units, but that's chilly for inside. And there'll be extended blackouts. People are annoyed about this. So people are going to get scapegoated. The Atlantic Council battled Ukraine. Worries about the direction of political travel. While he's an inspirational, brave wartime leader, okay, disagree. There are indeed worrying elements to Zelensky's rule. Well, definitely. I mean, it was expected that articles are going to have more about just the internal stuff. But, again, we're seeing these narrative shifts. It's a reopening of old wounds, I guess, of, hey, the situation in Ukraine isn't as clean cut as people expected in the past, or all the corruption claimed in the past is still there.